Hi guys, good morning to Peter, especially in New Zealand, and those of you who are in another country, especially if the sun is rising or risen when you are. Good afternoon if you're in other parts of the world, like late afternoon, like Caitlin in the UK, and good evening if you're in the African continent area, which is where clearly I am. Welcome to the Network Migration webinar tonight. But just to introduce myself, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrew Kerr. I'm a director and owner of Network Migration Services in South Africa, and I'm also a licensed immigration advisor for Australia and New Zealand. I was just having a chuckle with Rose beside me here, just talking about, what a unusual few years we've all had. Clearly, with the COVID crisis, and COVID's always going to be around, but most countries are dealing with it, bar China at the moment, which is extremely awful to see. But anyway, most countries are dealing with it, and of course, the world is ticking on and moving forward. And I'm really pleased to sort of welcome Liz. Liz is our HR manager. She's just moved actually from Durban up to Joburg, so it's welcome Liz to our Joburg operation. Caitlin Barclay, welcome Caitlin. Nice to have you on board tonight. Caitlin's immigrated to the UK, and with being very frank, Caitlin is such an outstanding colleague, and also is one of our colleagues that is going through the licensing process to become licensed in the next year or three. Caitlin immigrated with her family to the UK, and we decided that we didn't want to lose Caitlin, so we're really, really happy that Caitlin's decided to stay with the organisation. Welcome, Caitlin. I hope everything's okay and you're not getting too cold in the UK. So please, sorry, Rose, would you tell Tammy not to send stuff on Skype, please, Tam? Please, Rose. So sorry, guys. I see that Tammy, welcome, Tammy. Tammy's my PA and looks after us all in our Joburg office. She says she's struggling to load it. I'm just going to quit my Skype because I don't want to see Skype messages come through. Rose will handle that. Yeah, so sorry, Tammy. Clearly, when you type, it shows up on the screen. So I've actually quit my Skype. Thank you, Ruan. Thank you for, of course, thanks, Ruan. Renia, please refresh the page, should solve the issue. Ruan's head of our marketing. Ruan arranges the webinars for us and has openly reminded me tonight that this is the last webinar of the year, the 30th of November, with December around the corner. Peter, I'm assuming you're already in December because it's of course, Friday morning over there. So, yeah, so tonight we're going to be relatively quick. We're going to knock this over in 40, 45 minutes. I'm going to get straight to the point. I'm just going to introduce a few things initially. Then I'm going to be talking about Australia. Then I'm going to be talking about New Zealand. If you have questions, please type them into the Ask a Question chat room there. If it's questions on migration specifically, Liz or Caitlin or Peter or whatever, it's on job hunting, that type of stuff, Liz can answer. If it's on migration information, I will answer because I'm the licensed advisor. I'll go through the questions in half an hour or so when I'm finished the webinar itself. We'll have a 5-minute question and answer session at the end. So please don't be worried. Type your questions in. It's very casual tonight. I'm sitting here in a t-shirt and slops. And really quite chilled. It's 8 o'clock at night, our time here. And once I finish this, my son wants to watch Argentina play in the World Cup because he's supporting Lionel Messi. So I will certainly have knocked this over by 9 p.m. SA time. Just wanted to say a big thank you to all of our service providers over the many, many years that we've been involved in this business. I mean, I've owned the business since 1996. I've worked for it since 1993. So, gosh, next year it's 30 years since I've been in the industry of migrating people. And frankly, I love what I do. We've all got our ups and downs, especially in the service industry, but I really enjoy what I do. I'm extremely proud to have a fantastic team of people that work with me. My colleagues, I don't like calling my colleagues staff. They're part of the integral unit that keeps our business running. Over the many years to come, my staff are going to have opportunities to expand and grow and also travel. And it's really exciting to see our operations manager, Desiree, is immigrating to New Zealand to join Peter in the next month or two. So, one thing COVID did do on the positive is it really forced companies to use technology. It was all around before COVID, of course, but one thing COVID has done is it's forced companies to use the all-important ways of communicating, Google Meet, Skype, Teams, Zoom, etc. So Ruan already typed into the chat room my email address. Tonight's all about basic information. And I'm going to give you basic information and basic understanding of how the migration process works for both Australia and New Zealand. Then if you want to be assessed, I mean, some of you that are logged on tonight are actually clients, and welcome to the clients that have joined me this evening. I do have quite a few clients that join me. I do these every 3 weeks. We will publish our schedule in the first week of January, or probably even before Christmas. The next seminar will probably be about the third week of January, and then so on through the year, or webinar, I should say, so on through the year next year. But we are extremely engageable, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, the information that we give you is completely free. And if you're going to engage the services of an agent, and clearly, you should be shopping around a bit at the moment, you're either going to do this yourself or you're going to engage the services of an agent. Just make sure that the agent you use, or the agency you use, you understand the services you're going to get. There are companies out there that what we call the bare minimum. They're good at what they do, don't get me wrong, but they deliver the bare minimum. We like to think we're the complete opposite end of that scale, where we go beyond. And as I go through the webinar, you'll see we literally help you with everything. Peter's going to be joining us in about 10 minutes to talk about the job search training that he has especially developed over the last 6 or 7 years. That Peter's been the MD of our New Zealand office, and loving New Zealand himself with his wife and his family. And we really go the extra mile. If you require skills assessments on registration done with the relevant bodies, we do it for you. We don't just send you the links and say, well, listen, go ahead and do it yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So we very much go beyond the bare minimum as an organization. And even at the very beginning, you might not even use us, but at least when you've left, when you've got the information from us, and not just written information, I would strongly suggest you set up a meeting with me, Zoom, Skype, Google Meet, Teams, doesn't matter what it is. And frankly, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, because I'm as you're possibly guessing, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a pretty straight talker. I'm going to, telling you straight away your options, your processes, your procedures, your costs, and then, of course, giving you the full facts about the way forward. And then, of course, you can go away from that meeting and make an informed decision on who you are going to use, be it us, someone else, or, of course, go ahead and do it yourself. But at least be informed and at least understand. Please understand what you're paying for. Most of the agencies charge similar rates and similar fees. Some are extremely, some are a bit more expensive than us. Some are a little bit less, I suppose. But you've got to understand what you're getting for the money you're paying. And when, of course, you start this process, please try and understand what you're getting from beginning to end, because the process takes a good, 18 to 24 months for Australia. For New Zealand, to get you in could be as quick as 3 months. But, of course, we've got to get your residency, and that can take up to 3 to 4 years, depending on the visa subclass and category that you're applying under. So just understand what you're getting into and understand what you're paying for. And that type of information we'll impart to you at zero cost at all. We're not going to charge you for that information. So I'm working until the 16th, which is a public holiday in December. As you know, in South Africa, if you're living in this continent. So if you want to see me between now and Christmas, so you can go away at Christmas time and, make an informed decision, please just set up a Zoom, a Skype, a Teams with me. I consult Mondays to Saturdays. And as I've said, it's free. If you're going to do that, please try and send me your CVs first. Ruan did put my email address up there. It's andrew@networkmigration.com. Welcome to Desiree. Desiree is also a big part of the NMS family. In fact, she's our operations manager, and Desiree is the one that's moving to New Zealand. So welcome to you, Desiree, and thank you for joining us tonight at all. So some of the questions will be answered by some of my colleagues, but if it's specifically on immigration, they're just going to stick it aside, or they might just say, send something to Andrew, and Andrew will answer, and I'll have a quick squiz at the end, questions at the end. So that's taken the first 9-10 minutes to just introduce ourselves. You can see some of our service providers down there on the very first page. Thank you, as always, to all of them. If you want to find out the relocation services, please just contact Rose. Rose is my wife and partner. She's actually sitting beside me now. She is head of our relocation division and runs the ongoing services, which which are actually free. Those services, they're not free, of course, if you use the services. You've got to pay for moving and pay for pets and pay for a meet and greet at an airport, etc., etc. But finding out about those services is what Rose does, and Rose will put you in touch with our service providers, from Apex through to Pearson's, from the moving companies through to the flight companies, from the meeting people at the airports through to opening bank accounts. So we're literally a one-stop shop. My MARA registration number's on the first page here. That's the Australian license registration number. My IAA registration number is there as well. So if you wanted to check on us, you can. They are my registration numbers. You'll notice I'm also a member of the New Zealand Association for Migration and Investment and the Migration and Institute of Australia. And we find those bodies exceptionally informative to be part of, because they keep us up to date with the many, many, many changes that have happened in immigration, especially in the last few years. They've literally been happening weekly or monthly. So it's been a challenge for myself and Des and Liz and Rose and Ruhan and Caitlin and the team, just to sort of keep everybody happy in the last couple of years. But we're nearly there. We think we're about 80% over the hurdles, and we'd like to think that next year we're really going to power. And for those of you who are wanting to immigrate, of course, we're really looking forward to helping you. So let's just jump straight into the slideshow. The first one is just a little bit about us. Network's been around, as I've said, 30 years. We've got representation in a few countries. We've got offices in South Africa, of course. We've got representation in the UK and Zimbabwe, and of course in New Zealand with Peter and his team in New Zealand. Australian visa and points I'm going to do now. Then I'm going to do New Zealand relocation partners. We touch on through the process, and question and answers, as I mentioned, we will do at the end. We've already discussed that. That's me a couple of years ago. Australia, land of beauty. It's huge. It's a fantastic country. I lived in Australia for 10 years before I came to Africa. I loved it. I lived mainly in Sydney, but I spent a good 6 months in Brisbane, and also in Melbourne, and also in Perth. They're very diverse cities, Australia. It's an extremely exciting country, 25 million, 26 million people. And the cities are very, very different. I mean, it's a huge country. It's one of the biggest in the world, landmass-wise. In fact, if you look at it landmass-wise, South Africa as a country fits into the state of Queensland. That's how big Australia is. So it's a very, very big country. Thank you, Caitlin, for typing in Rose's email. Much appreciated. And by the way, clearly all our emails are our first names. So, Andrew or Rose or Caitlin or Desiree, Liz, Ruan, etc., Peter, all our emails are our first names at networkmigration.com. I'm going to ask you to take us, that's a little bit of clearly Australia, a beautiful country, as we've just discussed. Ladies and gentlemen, there's really not a visa we don't do. I'm blessed with 23 colleagues in our organization and the network family. We have our Christmas party on Friday, so please don't try and ring us on Friday. You can ring Peter in New Zealand. I'm not sure he's having his Christmas party on Friday. One or two of my colleagues, unfortunately, aren't able to travel to the Christmas party. So we will have a very, very skeleton staff on Friday. So, just give us the one day of the year where we can celebrate a year, which has been tough, and we've been excited to get through it. So there's not a visa we don't do. There really isn't. Skilled migrant, student, family, business, work, spousal, visitors, depending on the visa, we can advise you. So really, there's not a visa that we are not capable of doing for you or advising you on, okay? Please take a screenshot of that page. There's 2 pages. This one first, just take a screenshot of that with your phones or your laptops or your computers that you're on at the moment. I'm not going to go to too much detail in the pages, but just to point out certain things for Australia, you'll notice the cutoff age for a skilled migrant application is 45. So you need to be 44 years old or younger if you're going to get into Australia under a skilled migrant points tested application. Ladies and gentlemen, just a point, tonight I'm going to be talking mainly about skilled applications. If you are in a relationship with an Australian or a New Zealander, i.e. a spousal visa, or you're a business person looking at doing investments or opening businesses in these countries, you might be a parent wanting to join your children in these countries. You might have a short-term job offer in a place like Australia, for example. You might be, as I said, an investor. Those types of visas we have all of the information on. So please just drop me. For example, a parent, you might say, listen, I'm a parent. My son and daughter have been in Australia and New Zealand for a couple of years, and I'd like to find out, of course, the process for immigrating and joining them. All that information I will send you, no problem at all, and I will have a conversation with you over Zoom, Skype, etc., just to explain how the process works, and that won't cost you anything, as I've already mentioned. So tonight, we're just specifically concentrating on skilled migrant. Now, you'll notice for skilled migrant, cutoff age, as I've already mentioned, for Australia is 45. One thing that is extremely essential for Australia is the English language test. Now, you will need to do the English language test in most cases up front for Australia. And you might be sitting in the UK at the moment, like Caitlin is, for example, and saying, hey, I've got a British passport. I don't need to do the English language test. Well, you're quite right. There are certain countries that are exempt from English language, but you may still need the points. And in fact, it's probably highly likely you'll still need the points. And if you're in a country which is exempt from English language, you're exempt from the test, but you don't get the points. So clearly, if you need the points, you're still going to have to sit the English language test. Points for your qualifications are pretty straightforward. 99 times out of 100, if you're going to to Australia on a skilled migrant application, you are going to need a qualification. It's as simple as that. If you don't have one, you can pretty much forget getting into Australia. There are one or two instances you might get in, but I can talk about those with you privately, of course, or one-on-one, because they're quite specific. Points for work experience, you can see quite clearly 3 out of 5, 5 out of 8, out of 10 years. And you can only claim work experience that is related to the occupation you're claiming. And the occupation is based around ANZSCO codes. We're going to be talking a lot about ANZSCO codes in a minute when we do New Zealand. But ANZSCO stands for Australia, New Zealand Standard Classification of Your Occupation. Okay, so basically it's an occupational dictionary. It's got thousands of occupations in there. I think there's 8,000 or 10,000 occupations in there, but clearly not all of those are specific for migrants. And then, of course, you'll notice you get bonus points here under the language here. You get bonus points for nominating by a state. You get bonus points if your spouse has that qualification and is on the same occupational list as you. You get bonus points for regional migration into Australia. You get bonus points for spousal English, etc. So I hope you've taken a screenshot of that page, because please take a screenshot of this one as well. Now, while you're taking a screenshot of that, let's just do a quick summary on how Australia works, okay? First of all, up until about July this year, Australia had pretty much not selected anyone since COVID crisis. The borders were closed, and the only people they were allowing in were critical workers. It was pretty much the same for New Zealand. You know, when I say critical workers, I mean essential workers that were needed during the COVID crisis. So healthcare workers in some instances, you know, some IT workers. Anyway, so they were the only people. Then Australia all of a sudden they announced about 8 weeks ago now, they're looking for 190,000 immigrants in the next 12 months until June next year, June the 30th next year, because that's the end of their tax year. And then all of a sudden we started getting nominations. Now, Australia used to select every fortnight, every 2 weeks. Then they went to monthly. And then during the COVID crisis, they went to quarterly. So Australia still advertises that they select from the main skills pool every 12 weeks. And the last selection was the end of October, and the next selection is the end of January, and every 3 months after that. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear an announcement relatively soon that Australia will go back to monthly or fortnightly selections, because quite frankly, at the moment, they are selecting every month. We're getting 2 or 3 or 4 of our clients selected every week at the moment, mainly because most of the states are also open. There are 8 states and territories in Australia, and they're all given a quota for migrants by federal government. So, for example, federal government says, right, we want 190,000 workers. And of that, we want, and I'm just using figures here, you can't quote me on these figures, but we want 50,000 people coming in on the skilled migrant process. So for that, we're going to allocate 5,000 spaces to South Australia, 5,000 to New South Wales, 2,000 to ACT, 4,000 to whatever, etc., etc. So the federal government allocates the states their quotas, and then the states advertise their own skills list. So you've got the main skills list, which is called the medium and long-term strategic skills shortage list. I know it's a mouthful, but that's what it's called. And then you've got the state list, and they are called the state and territory skilled occupations list. So you might be on the main list and also on the state lists. You might not be on the main list, but on the state lists. Now, clearly, if you're on the main list, we call the MMT, the Medium and Long-Term Strategic Skills Shortage list, the subclass 189 list. I call it the blue chip visa. Once you're allocated that visa, once you're granted that visa, you can live where you want in Australia and you can do what you want. Okay. And lately, you're looking here at the minimum points required 65. Up until recently, when I say recently, 3 or 4 months ago, Australia hadn't selected anyone on less than 80 points for about 5 years. And now that they've announced they want so many people, we're noticing we're getting selections on 65 under certain occupations, admittedly. But some of our clients are being selected on 65 and in 70s and 75s and so on. So some of it is occupational dependent. So clearly, when and if we speak with you or you contact us, we'll be able to give you an idea of what states are nominating and, of course, the processes moving forward on obtaining that state nomination. Hence the fact that you should have a consultation and I can run you through it and tell you what to do, etc. And then if you go and do it yourself, feel free. If you use somebody else, feel free. Or if you use us, of course, we'll look forward to working with you. So processes is this. If you come on board with us for either country, by the way, you're allocated a file manager. We have 11 of them, and the file manager works with me on prepping all of your documentation. So you would be sent, the file manager does a specific starter pack for you, which is based on you. You know, you might be a tradesman, you might be an accountant, you might be a doctor, you might be a lawyer. So clearly your starter packs are different for each occupation. So what we do is we personalize your starter pack and you'll receive that within 7 to 10 working days of coming on board with us. Once you've got your starter pack, you would then collect the basic documentation we need to kick off the processes. And the checklist, it's obvious, ladies and gentlemen, birth certificates, marriage documents, relationship proof, if you're not married, of course, police clearances, medicals eventually, copies of your qualification documentation, proof of your work experience letters, except English language tests if needed, etc., etc. So there's quite a lot of stuff that we'll work with you on during that period of time, but we'll try and make it as simple for you as possible. And your file manager and myself will hold your hand through the entire process until you've got your residency visas. Not just your work visas if it's New Zealand, I'm talking your residency visas as well. So that's why we're with you for Australia for up to 2 years. Sometimes longer, depending on how quickly they're selecting. And for New Zealand, for at least, 2 years, mostly 4, because we're with you until you gain residency whilst you're working in New Zealand. Okay, so once you've received the starter pack for Australia, normally you've got the documentation back to us within a couple of months to get your skills assessed. That really shouldn't take you that long, but giving us the documentation, because if you're going under a skilled migrant application, you need your skills assessed. And they're assessed by an Australian assessing authority. There's over 30 of them, depending on, for example, engineers, you're assessed by Engineering Australia, Nursing Council, the Australian Nursing Council, and so on it goes. The skills assessments cost, these assessments charge anywhere from $500 to an average of $1,500. Unless you're a tradesman, then it's a lot more expensive. And they take on average between 6 to 12 weeks. Again, unless you're a tradesman, some trades are taking longer because VETASESS, unfortunately, is under huge pressure at the moment. Anyway, so once your assessment once the documentation has been received by us, we'll prepare it and send it off to the relevant assessing authority for assessment. Then, during that period of time, clearly you'd sit your English test. By the way, some of the skills assessing authorities will require your English up front. Otherwise, they won't assess you. So I can tell you that in a one-on-one consult or, of course, in the emails that I'm going to send you back. Anyway, so the assessment comes back in, let's say, roughly 3 months. We then load the applications, and we would suggest we load multiple applications. We can load a 189, which I've told you is the blue chip visa. A 190 is state nominated, where you get 5 extra points. And you sign a declaration that says you're happy to live and work in that sponsoring state. It's still residency. You still get healthcare and benefits, schooling, etc. And then the 491 came out in November 2019, just before COVID hit. And it's a new visa. You get 15 bonus points for a 491. And bottom line is a 491 is a 5-year temporary entry visa, but you still get schooling and healthcare on it. And then in that visa, for the first 3 years of living in Australia, you cannot live or work in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, or the Gold Coast. There are the 4 areas you can't work on a 491. You can live anywhere else in Australia and work anywhere else in Australia for the first 3 years on a 491, except those 3 areas. So that's why when we load an application, it's time. It just takes us 4 odd hours to load an application. And I would suggest strongly, and I'll be doing this with you personally, that we load multiple applications. If you're on the list, I'd definitely load a 189 and a 190 together, because you're then double barreling. You've got a double barrel shotgun there. You've got a double chance of being selected. I might hold back on the 491 to load that, just depending on who's being selected at the time. But clearly, when we've had our one-on-one consultations and whatever, we'll be able to discuss that more personally. So once you're selected, Immigration Australia, Department of Home Affairs, DHA, says, congratulations, you've been selected. It's called Skills Select. And they'll send you a notification that your Skills Select account has changed. And that's actually good news, because 99 times out of 100, it means you've been selected. And then once you're selected, we then send them all of the relevant documentation that we're claiming points for, i.e. English qualifications, work experience, et cetera, plus, of course, things like your birth certificates and marriage documents and relationship proof and et cetera. Then you're processed, and processing is normally around about the 6-month mark. Okay. So 6 to 9. So you could look at Australia taking you somewhere between, if you're extremely lucky, 9 months and 9 to 18 months. So work on 12 to 18 months and you'd be pretty accurate. So if you started the process now, with a bit of luck, you'd be selected by the end of next year, and you'd be able to travel to Australia for Christmas in 2023. But if you're going to want to be there by Christmas 2023, then I suggest you get on with it. And by the way, I'm going to start New Zealand now, and the first thing I'm going to do is invite Peter in. But, as I said, Australia is selecting, and so is New Zealand. I mean, job-wise, the jobs are coming out of the ears at the moment, and Peter's going to be talking about that. But, yeah, I mean, there's no better time as far as we're concerned. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, I've been in this business for, 29, 30 years. I have never seen opportunities like there are at the moment regarding Australia and New Zealand. And I mean work. There is just stacks of it. So Peter's coming on board now. He's accepting and connecting. And then I'm just going to play a little video first. Morning to you, Peter. How are you?
Well, thanks. And you, Andrew?
Good, thanks, mate. Looking forward to seeing you really soon, because we'll be coming there next year. Hey, yuppie. Yeah. And Desiree's going to arrive before us, but anyway. So I just want to play the little video regarding the job process, Peter, before you have your chat, if that's okay. It'll take me 2 seconds. Okay. So clearly we know New Zealand, again, all types of visas, ladies and gentlemen, et cetera, no problem. Please just listen to this.
Where no New Zealanders are available for a job, employers can hire a skilled migrant worker using the Accredited Employer Work Visa, or AEWV. Before inviting a migrant to apply for an AEWV, employers must become accredited with Immigration New Zealand and complete a job check for the role they want to fill. This means migrant workers can have more confidence about the role they're coming to New Zealand for. To gain accreditation, an employer must be a genuine business in a good financial position and have no recent history of breaching employment or immigration law or business standards. The job check confirms that the job pays the market rate, and the terms and conditions of the contract comply with New Zealand's employment standards. Before applying for a job check, employers need to advertise most roles to prove there are no New Zealand citizens or residents available for the job. After an employer's job check has been approved, you will be sent an email containing a link and a job check token. This means you can access the online portal and apply for your visa. The application process is all done online, where you will fill in your details and upload supporting documentation. Immigration New Zealand will check if you meet the requirements for the AEWV and that you have the skills and experience the employer is seeking. Once you are employed, your employer must provide you with information to help you settle into life in New Zealand and give you time to complete Employment New Zealand's online modules on employment rights while you are at work. The AEWV is designed to ensure only good employers can hire migrant workers and helps prevent migrant exploitation. More information about the AEWV is on our website.
And then just jumping to this slide, guys. Sorry, you can have a look at that, take a screenshot of that while Peter's chatting. Morning, Peter. Peter, you've been in New Zealand now. Gosh, I always get it wrong. 6 years.
6 years, yeah.
6 years. So anyway, and clearly you well, in my opinion and our opinion, I know I'm biased, you've developed the best job search training process on the planet when it comes to immigrants moving to New Zealand. So ball in your court, my mate. Please explain to the guests. We've got about just under 200 actually. How it works.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Welcome, everybody. We're the New Zealand team, purely here to help you on the whole migration and relocation process. We're not involved, except for Michelle, who's now starting to do file managing, but Judy and myself and Rose and Liz in South Africa are all based here to help you on the whole job search and relocation part of the process. So after you've signed up with Network Migration Services, we then start you on the networking, how to network, market, and brand yourself in the New Zealand market. If you've got one of those easy to fill roles like an HVAC technician, I see there's one question from somebody there about HVAC.
I felt like ringing him up and telling him we could get him 5 jobs tomorrow. But anyway, carry on.
Yeah, there's a few roles that you can get a job immediately. But if you're one of those roles where you need to start looking for work and just applying for work, we find is a very negative process. It makes you demotivated. The process we're following is a very motivational process. It starts, you actually learn a lot about the country, about companies, about your career and your role in New Zealand, how that functions, operates, the different namings of the job titles, etc. So the process we follow is a very positive process, and it builds up your confidence to then be able to go start applying for jobs and then being successful in the interviews. So we follow the 4-pillar process, where pillar 1 is to search engine optimize your social media profiles to help you build up your network and to illustrate your value add to companies. So the next level, the pillar 2, which we then train you up on, is how to connect with people in New Zealand or whichever country you want to in the world. It doesn't matter. This is not sort of New Zealand only focused. This can be used internationally. Is to connect at 5 different levels. And these 5 levels are critical levels. People only connect normally at 1 or 2 levels. But there are 5 levels which you can market and brand yourself. The third pillar is then to how to market and brand yourself. There's certain tricks. We teach you how to quadruple your exposure just by doing a simple little trick. And then the fourth part of the 4th pillar itself is about interview training. And here we teach you of how to transfer your value add across to an employer in a very subtle way without them understanding, and how to maximize the salary you get out of a company. And there's a trick we teach you there as well of how to convey this message very subtly without the person even noticing. So these, we also then give you culture training for New Zealand. We explain the different culture, and Australia, the difference in the cultures and how the interviews run versus a South African interview. So that's on the job search side of things. The rest of what else we do supply you on the relocation side is that we introduce you to our partners who help you in many different ways. Firstly, how to, if you want to bring a container across to New Zealand, which container companies to use, transferring foreign exchange, how to open bank accounts, how to get your tax numbers. We've got checklists before you leave South Africa even. We've got a long 12-page checklist of what to do before you leave South Africa. So that minimizes your problem in your country of arrival, not to sit with trying to cancel things while you're in your old country, which we know sometimes is very difficult to do over a telephone line. It gets kind of expensive. So we help you wrap up your lives. And then we have a pre-departure list or pre-departure meeting with you, where we sit with you and we go through sort of a checklist. If you're coming across, we sit with you and see, which airport you're going to, what tickets have you booked, what is happening when you land, who's going to fetch you, how are you going to get from the airport to your accommodation, which accommodation do you have, all those type of things. Then we look at when you're landing, how to get your tax numbers sorted out, how to get your driver's licenses converted, all those different types of things. So that's a pre-departure. Sorry, then we go to the onshore. When you land, we help you with tax numbers, how to buy a car, how to rent a home, what do you need to do to rent a home, what's the process like. So we have that holding your hand all along the way on this whole journey. And it's a very interesting journey, very stressful journey. We even teach you about the stress of immigration, which is a very real thing. If you understand how to deal with the stress, then you cope with it much better. Now, we've had huge success through the COVID period. We've had over 150 people now getting work visas and coming on shore and being successful just through the job search training that we've been doing over the COVID period and preparing people for this. So that when the borders opened, everybody was already marketed and brand themselves, and they could immediately talk to employers. And the employers recognized their names, or the recruiters, and they then sort of quite quickly, within a few weeks, got job offers. We sat with 90 job offers in the first month just after the borders opened, and that then just continued. And it's if you want, and we do job search, if you separately just want to see if you can find work here first, we do job search training separately without the visa services. And if you then take our visa services, we will deduct the fees of the job search training off the visa services. So you're welcome to send me an email just for a quote on just the job search training. Email me at peter@networkmigration.com. And I can just give you a separate quotation just for the visa, the training services. I'll hand you back to Andrew. Thanks.
Yeah, Peter, I've just some of the questions coming through. First of all, Kapish, the advantage you've got with Australia is you're getting your visa first. So once you've got your visa, then initially you've normally got around 9 to 12 months to make your initial entry. And in that 9 to 12 months, Peter and his team can, of course, because the job training is done for Australia just as much as New Zealand. It's just that the difference with New Zealand is you need the job up front, whereas in Australia you don't. You're going to get your visa first 9 times out of 10. And then Victor was asking here, and thank you for the questions, Victor. They're all very prevalent and relevant. You've asked here, are there opportunities for fresh graduates? If I go back to Kapish's question, is he's worried about, because of the job market being so tight. I would actually disagree with that. I mean, I would say that in New Zealand or in Australia at the moment, I have never, ever seen as many jobs being advertised locally and internationally that there currently is. And I've been doing this for 30 years. And what he was asking is, will companies do Zooms and Skypes? Liz responded by saying a lot of that depends, of course, on your qualifications and what you are. We've already mentioned an HVAC technician. I mean, we can make phone calls and get you jobs, for example. There are certain occupations, early childhood educators, for example, diesel mechanics. I mean, I saw a lovely guy the other day. He works on heavy-duty diesel equipment. I mean, he's going to walk it to a job. He really is. And those are the sorts of people that will comfortably, in my opinion, get jobs without even leaving their home country. But somebody like you, Victor, let's say you're 24 years old and you've just come out of university and you've got a degree in engineering. Yes, you'll probably still get the odd Zoom or two or Google Meet or two or whatever. But you should also consider just saying, righto, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm going to get in. Why don't I just fly there? Why don't I, and clearly you've got to apply for an appropriate visitor's visa and tell immigration why you're going. But my point is, why don't I just fly there? Now, Peter mentioned that, and Peter, you've been there 6 years, mate. Up until COVID, 90% of our clients were flying in to meet with you and, of course, going for job hunting on arrival. That's changed quite a lot, hasn't it? I mean, it's still quite a percentage that are going to be flying in the next few months, but nowhere near as high as 90. I'd be saying maybe 50. It's 50 or 60%.
Yeah, 50 to 60% of people need to fly these days. There has been an opening for Zooms and interviewing people across, across state lines, as we use in America. But they're still going back to they want to see you face to face, because an interview in New Zealand is based more on your culture fit and your team fit than your actual skills. They want to see how do you settle in. And as I do in the training, I teach people your interview starts when you walk in the front door, not when you sit down with the people who are interviewing you, because They want to see how you communicate with people within the office and within the working environment. And they even ask the people that you've met going through the office, what is your opinion of this person? Should we hire them or shouldn't you? And if you're rude to one person, that scuttles your job. You can be the best qualified person in the world, but they will not hire you because team and culture fit is valued 100 times higher than any other skill that you have.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons.
Yeah. Well, Peter, I mean, I'm not sure if you've got appointments this morning, mate. Do you?
Yes, I do. Of course.
Okay.
Every morning.
All right. So I'm actually going to, and listen, celebrating your Christmas party. You haven't told me what you're going to do with the ladies yet, but let me know clearly because it'll be exciting and take photos. We'll certainly. Yeah. Rose is actually. We're having it here, and you should see outside. It's looking fantastic. Looks like a Christmas tree outside at the moment. So Rose has been doing what she really enjoys doing, which is getting the house looking lovely for the team on Friday. And, of course, we're having load shedding during our Christmas party, which will be fun.
Candles. Yeah,
we've got lots of Christmas lights, etc., hanging around. So I'm going to let you go, Peter. Thanks so much, as always, for your outstanding work, you and the team in New Zealand, and we look forward to sending a lot more people your way.
Thanks, Andrew. Our Christmas party is also Friday night, so enjoy.
Oh, good. Well, enjoy, mate, and we'll take pictures and swap them.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yes, bud. Ciao, bye. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of the questions you're asking, have a consultation with me. They're free. They don't cost anything. So you're asking specific, is there work from home jobs? Is there completing a second degree? They're all relevant and pertinent questions, Lisa and Tyrone. By the way, Lisa, you cannot work distance learn. If you're working for a company, you have to be working for that company and being paid from that country. You can't work here and be paid by an Australian. Well, you could, but then you wouldn't get Australian residency that way because you're not living there. So these are very specific questions that you're asking. Set up a consultation with me. The next sort of 3 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm happy to consult. I consult Mondays to Saturdays. So just let me know. I'm happy to set the consult up. Even if you just want to ask some questions, just email me, andrew@networkmigration.com, and tell me you'd like to have a chat with me regarding your process and moving forward. And I might then send you the process anyway, and then we consult. I might consult first and then send you the process. That'll depend on you. So we've got about 10 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. So let's just jump through to how New Zealand is going to gauge you, how you're going to get in, all right, once you get that all-important job offer. Excuse me, I jumped. The current Minister of Immigration, the Honourable Michael Wood, has brought out Green List Tier 1, Green List Tier 2. I'm getting emails on a daily basis saying, I don't qualify because I'm not on the green list. That is not true. So just because you're not on the green list does not mean you don't have a chance of getting into Australia and New Zealand. So don't worry too much if you're not on the green list. If you've got work experience, consistent work experience, and a possible qualification or one or t'other, then you'll probably get in anyway. But anyway, there are 76 occupations in this little page here, and they're all on the green list Tier 1. And an announcement was made recently that green list Tier 1 applications are going to be fast-tracked. We think, and I still mean think, and Des, Liz, you might want to just remind me of this, or Caitlin, please. Have they confirmed the actual time yet? Caitlin, Des, Liz, one of you answer. It doesn't really matter. I'm not sure they have, or have we had specific legislation around this? We're hearing 8 weeks, but that's quite extreme. But if it's 8 weeks, yippee. Because if it is, and you're on this green list, you must meet the requirements on the green list. You're not just getting an occupation. For example, chemical engineer. That has requirements. You have to have a degree from a recognized institution, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so if you're on green list Tier 1, your process to residency is going to be really quick. It's going to be probably within 3 months. And if that's the case and the employer is willing to wait for you, because it's still job related, you still have to have a job offer there, and the employer is willing to wait for you, then you could probably bypass the work visa requirements. But that would be, of course, if the employer is willing to wait for you and the processing time is 8, maybe 10 weeks. Okay. So this is green list. This is green list Tier 2. Few occupations on here, not enough in our opinion, and frankly, not enough in most of the opinion. Thank you, Desiree. 6 to 8 weeks for straight to residency. STR stands for straight to residency. Now, this one is called work to residence, this one, because it's 2 years. You work, if you're a diesel motor mechanic, you get a job offer, you work for 2 years for the company, and bang, you lodge your residency application then, and it's automatic. By the way, your work visas, all your accredited employers' work visas are generally issued for 3 years, unless, of course, you're on a short-term contract. But they're generally issued for 3 years. So on Green List Tier 1, you'll get residency within 3 months. Green List Tier 2, we lodge residency 2 years after being working for the employer. You've also got a lower income pathway, roles exempt from the accredited employer's wage, medium wage threshold. There's a few occupations on here, as you can see. Hospitality industry, a lot of them on there. Even hotel receptionists, trekking guides, motel managers, etc., etc. This is if you're not getting the higher income, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Okay, and as of February next year, the income for that goes up a little bit, and as of April next year, for the tourism and hospitality industry, it goes up a bit. Hence the need to have one-on-one with me if you need it, because we can talk about all these little idiosyncrasies. Here's the points test. So if you're not getting in on Green List Tier 1 or Green List Tier 2, there and there, you have skilled migrant category, which is based on points. Here's the points, but they don't exist anymore. So I should have actually taken this thing out. Here is the current points. So when I say they don't exist anymore, the last selection on those points I just showed you was 2 weeks ago. That might have even been 3 weeks ago. I think it was on the 9th of November. Anyway, here is the current points. Ruan, you may remind me tomorrow, mate, to take those previous 2 slides out. Thank you, my friend. I forgot to do it. Anyway, from 18th of January, which is the next expressions of interest pool selection by New Zealand Immigration for the next 6 months anyway, until July, the selection process is going to be at 180. Okay? Now, you'll notice here your work experience. All the work experience you're claiming must be related to the job offer you get. Okay? You can't claim it if it's not related. You get bonus points if your job offers in an area of absolute skill shortage. You get bonus points if you've got work experience in an area of absolute skill shortage, etc., of 2 to 5 years or 6 years plus. Here's why getting a job, well, you don't get it. You don't get a job, you don't get in under a skilled migrant visa or accredited employer's work visa. Here's why getting a job on a points test is so extremely important. You get 50 points if the job's in Auckland. And if it's outside of Auckland, you can add these two together, 50 and 80 points. Okay. And then, of course, you get bonus points again if you're the job offers in an area of absolute skill shortage, etc., etc. And you get bonus points if you're earning 115,484. Now, that is in effect until February. This will change in February to around about 123,000. So at the moment, if you get a job offer at this level, in fact, if you do get a job offer at this level at the moment, you could also do a high income pathway to residency. Because if you're earning double the median wage, and currently it's 115,484, if you're earning that, then and you get a job between now and the 23rd of Feb, it's either the 23rd or 18th of Feb. Anyway, between now and the end of Feb, then again, you've got a 3-year work visa on that sort of income. 2 years later, bang, we lodge residency and it's processed straight away. Please take a screenshot of this page as well. And the other big thing you'll notice about New Zealand is the age limit is 56, not 45, which is a big plus factor. We have a heap of clients between 45 and 55 that, want to immigrate, and therefore we clearly point them towards New Zealand, not Australia, because they won't get in. Well, that's not quite true. You could still get in over 45 to Australia, but your pathway to residency is probably 0. So be careful of that. There are pathways over 45, but it's high income, or, you get ministerial waivers for age, that type of stuff. But, be careful. And that's why if you're over 45, you want to go to Australia, have a consultation with me and I can explain it. Okay, so there's your points for age. We've already talked about you getting a job offer, but when your spouse gets a job offer, if it meets the requirements, the immigration requirements, you can claim 20 points for it. If your spouse has a qualification, you can also claim points. You can claim points for your qualifications as well. Here, trades, diplomas 40, degrees and honors 50, masters and doctorates 70. You can get points for qualifications if you got them in New Zealand. You can get, if your partner, again, has a post-grad of a level 9 or 10, which is masters or PhD, you can claim 20 points. But you've got here, if no qualification, you may need to upgrade. Now, I put that in recently. you might, the 180 points has really put a bit of pressure on Auckland. And in fact, I actually sent an email to the opposition minister of immigration the other day, Erica Stanford, who I admire tremendously. And it was just, pointing out to Erica that, and she's already brought it up in Parliament, and she will clearly, she'll get there. She clearly is trying to upskill New Zealand in the best possible way. And what 180's done is it shifted the mark, and it really means that a lot of people can't go to Auckland anymore. Now, when you consider that a quarter of your population lives and works in Auckland, which means a quarter of your jobs are going to come from Auckland, to exclude Auckland is a little bit extremely, a little bit extreme. I won't go into the words I was going to say, but my point is I think that this might have to be readjusted down. You cannot quote me on that. I don't know that at all, but I do think because of the way that it's penalising Auckland, that as and when changes are made later in the next year, of course, this may change. Okay. All right. So now, when it comes to getting a job in New Zealand, you don't necessarily have to have a qualification as well. New Zealand will assess you based on your ANSCO code. So let's show you them. Okay. If you're on an ANSCO code 1 to 3, currently between now and February, the end of February, you must receive a minimum salary of $27.76 per hour in order for immigration to grant you the visa. If it's an ANSCO 4 or 5, you're looking at $41.64. And there's your bonus points for high income again. But as of, you can see here, the 27th of February, I was right, thank you. I said 23rd, my apologies. Your ANSCOs, your minimum income requirements are lifting. So as of the 23rd, if you're going to get a job after Feb, well, in fact, frankly, if you're going to get a job now, unless you're lodging your residency application before the 27th of February, you should be looking at, in fact, I'm telling all my clients, you need to be shooting at $30 an hour, $29.66 an hour, which ends up being just about $62,000 a year. And these haven't been confirmed yet, but these are our calculations of the bonus point high income going up and ANSCO occupations 4 to 5 going up. So they'll be pretty accurate because we've calculated them based on experience. So they should be fine. Abu, the fact that you're in Senegal doesn't make a difference, mate. You can be anywhere in the world and I'll consult with you. It doesn't matter based on time zones and time frames. So so in other words, for Australia, remember, everything is done up front. We submit while you're offshore. You get your skills assessed offshore. We load the application while you're offshore, and you get your visas while you're offshore, 99% of the time. For New Zealand, what we do, same starter pack, same documentation, checklist, et cetera. But once you're ready, and it takes 4 to 8 weeks to get you ready, then your first step is you'll hand it over to Rose. By that stage, we would have written CVs and LinkedIn profiles, whatever. Rose will introduce you to Peter and the New Zealand team regarding the job training method. It's all done electronically now, or most of it's done electronically now by way of videos or webinars or mini webinars that you can watch. And once, of course, you're feeling comfortable, then you can start approaching the New Zealand job market. And as I mentioned about 20 minutes ago, it is ripe for approaching. They are screaming for skills in New Zealand and Australia at the moment, across the board. And what I would suggest you did is you put a line in the sand and you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to work with NMS team and let's give it 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 1 month. It's your choice where you draw that line in the sand. And you say to yourself, and I'm saying to clients now, let's get it ready. Let's get everything between now and the end of the year, get all your documents in order, and let's really push the job hunting and the job training in the first January, February of next year. But if you haven't found a job by March, April, I'd hop on a plane because we'll do a visitor's visa for you, which will allow you to go to New Zealand to look for work. And you can go to New Zealand, get the job, and you can lodge the application while you're onshore, because we would do it for you, clearly. We'll do all of this. And it takes about 4 weeks to process, give or take, 3 to 5 weeks to process. And during that 3 to 5 weeks, especially if you've left family behind, of course, you can find a home, find schools, find a car, do whatever you need to do while you're waiting for your visa to be granted. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if the work visa is granted for 3 years, I'll answer that in a second, Marcel. It's a very good question. The visa is valid for 3 years, and clearly if you're on high income or Green List Tier 2, we're lodging your residency after 2 years. If you're on skilled migrant, it's currently showing 4 years on the website, which is, if you think about it, is a little bit extremely ridiculous, which means you've got to lodge work visas again after 3 years. So, you know, I know there's going to be some changes next year, and I'm hoping that will change drastically. And in fact, I think it will. I can safely say that I don't think it will be 4 years on a skilled migrant category. Or, of course, Green List Tier 1. So when I send you and talk to you about your processes, I will give you all of your options, okay? So relocation, we've done pre-departure. I mean, we've talked about this. We've got 5 minutes until my son's going to scream at me and say, please, Dad, I want to watch a football. Because he's sitting in front of me, but they're still, you know, singing their songs at the moment. But I can't hear what he just said to me, but it was probably something nasty. Although he's not a nasty boy. What did you say?
I said answer Marcel's question.
I'll answer Marcel's question. Well, Marcel, I will ask you a question. Thank you, James. It's a really good question, Marcel, and it's one that's currently being debated. At the moment, you can take a child with you up to and including the age of 24 years old, provided they're deemed dependent. Okay. Now, by dependent, you know, clearly if they're in college or school or whatever, or they're not working, or they may be doing menial jobs, which are not bringing them in a big income, et cetera, et cetera. However, if they've already matriculated, and this is why you probably need a one-on-one as well, if we haven't already had one. And let's say they're matriculating this year. If it was me, I'd probably put my child into year 13 in New Zealand next year, which is another matric year, but it's introducing them to the New Zealand educational system. And if they matric in New Zealand, their first year of university education, if they're going to university, is completely free. So it might be worth thinking about that. Just Google year 13 in New Zealand and you'll find out what I'm talking about. However, at the moment, under the current ministerial legislation, if the child is 19 or over and already left school, or 18 or over and already left school, then they're granted a visitor's visa. And that visitor's visa is issued initially for 9 months. And then normally you can extend it onshore for a minimum 3. And we've had situations where our children have been in, especially during COVID, they turned 18 or 19 and they were in there the 9 months and got the extra 3. And of course, we asked for extra extensions and they were granted. Personally, this is the most ridiculous legislation around, or one of them, okay? Because why stop our children working when they've left school? Why not just grant them a work visa? And Stacey, I was going to answer that question next because it's another pertinent one, and I'm very vehemently against that one as well. Anyway, so the minister has been openly debated with in Parliament. The Right Honourable Erica Stanford was debating with him in Parliament. And she made a comment, which I won't repeat, but there was nothing swearing about the comment, but it was a comment that basically said that the new legislation and some of the new changes coming in just don't make sense to the general community. No, Michael, you can't. You can sponsor them in a later stage, but you can't take your parent with you. I'm sorry about that. So currently, can you take your children? Yes, you can. And I do think that legislation will be changed by the end of next year, that they'll be able to go to work and study at local rates if they've already matriculated. I'm confident that that will be changed. Okay, don't tell me why, because I'm going to get into political discussion with you, and I don't want to do that over a general forum. Okay, so and then so what Stacey's asking is, the Minister of Immigration also announced months ago, and I actually thought he'd canned this, and I believe he hasn't, but that sometime through December they were going to announce that if you're taking your spouse with you, you're going to get in on a skilled migrant visa, a work visa based on your background and work experience, et cetera, and salary levels. What happens to the spouse? Well, he said he was going to announce that the spouse will be given a visitor's visa. Now, in Mr. Michael Wood's defense, he didn't announce that. The Right Honourable Christopher Foy did before he resigned. Christopher Foy was the previous Minister for Immigration. And when he announced this, I mean, everybody just, well, I mean, what? You know, I mean, even Miss Stanford, who I've talked about, Mrs. Stanford, sorry, I've talked about recently, she debated this in Parliament with Minister Christopher Foy. And his answer was, frankly, and I'm going to say it, his answer was ridiculous. He said, well, at least they can come. I mean, so if this comes in, then yes, excuse me, I can't remember who answered the question, Stacey, your spouses would have to, can they go? Absolutely. They'll be on your visa. They'll get a visitor's visa. But they'd have to qualify for work in their own right. By the way, most spouses do, because most spouses are working, or if a spouse isn't working, then and they're a domestic engineer looking after the children, of course, then they wouldn't need a work visa anyway. But most of the spouses, since I've started assessing the spouses in the last month or two, most of them qualify anyway. So what we would do as a company is we would work with the spouse and Peter and the team on helping the spouse find a credible job that met the requirements. And all it would mean is the spouse is going to come in on a visitor's visa, but then we'll do a separate visa application for the work visa for the spouse. But the spouse would always be on the residency application. That hasn't changed. So, again, it just doesn't seem right. He's being attacked in Parliament on this again. Whether it finally comes in next month, who knows? I'm hoping it doesn't, but you never know with this particular government at the moment what decisions they're going to make. So, and then Michael, no, if you're going to Australia, you need to, it works on the balance of family test. In other words, your parents would need to have an equal or a great amount of their children in Australia at the time to be able to, for you to be able to sponsor them in. And then it's not a cheap exercise. It'll take 5 or 6 years anyway. If they're going to New Zealand, you can sponsor them in after you have been a resident of New Zealand for 3 years. Okay. So I think that's about it, guys. I mean, we're at 9 o'clock now, and I'm just checking the questions if I can get to them that we've asked them. I saw the team answered most of them. Thank you, team. Good day, please. Des. Okay, so thank you, Desiree. Thank you for answering questions. Thank you, Liz. Thanks to Peter for joining us tonight. Thanks to Caitlin. Thanks to Des. Thanks to Ruan for always organising it. Thanks to Liz. I hope I've thanked everybody from my team that joined us this evening. I really appreciate the work you do, guys, and so do the clients. You're an outstanding group of people, and I love working with you. So thank you, everybody. If you really wanted to have some information from us, you know who to contact. You know where we are. I'm happy to assist you at no charge to give you the advice. Thank you, Robert, for that. And thank you very, very much, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Have a great day, have a great morning, or have a great afternoon. Thank you to my team. Have a fantastic evening, guys. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Ciao, everybody. Bye.